Hey, hi, hello. I want to talk about Demi Lovato. Okay, first, this is me filming my eyebrows. There was a very, very kind subscriber who asked if I could do my eyebrows on camera and just show you guys how I do them, because a lot of times they'll already be done when I start doing my makeup, or I do a very quick version of them. So I wanted to give you guys like an in-depth of how I do my eyebrows. I hope it's entertaining, and let's get into it. My mirror, by the way, is like right here. The first half of this will be out at some point. You'll see it. It'll be there, I promise. So the first thing I'm using is my e.l.f. eyebrow pencil. I'll have everything that I use linked down below. Actually, no, I'm going to start with my Anastasia brow powders. They look like this. I've used up a lot of it. I don't know what the name of these powders are, but I think it was the dark brunette. Anyway, let's get into it. I'm using the lighter color first. If you guys don't know what's happening, Demi Lovato recently went into a store to get some frozen yogurt. And then she had a massive, massive meltdown. She went into the store wanting to get some frozen yogurt, and the store had a lot of different options there. And one of the options there was like for the sugar-free stuff, right? And it said stuff like, you know, guilt-free. And she got really, really triggered by that. She was really upset that they were quote unquote pushing diet culture. And then when she went online to complain about it, the store actually hit her back with, hey, we actually cater to a whole bunch of different types of people, including people who have stuff like celiac disease and diabetics who cannot eat regular sugar, right? And that's why those food items were there. And rather than just taking the L at this point, she instead continues to go on the defensive and says like, well, you know, you guys should have been more aware of that. You guys should be more aware that there could be a subsection of your population who have like eating disorders and that this would really trigger them. And then, you know, you should be more careful about how you market it, and you should never put things like guilt-free on them. Okay. I know that there's more to it than that. Those are just the only points that I care about. I'm still using the light brown color. I'm brushing it all through my eyebrows. So here's my issue with it. I have seen a ton of fat activists essentially get mad at stores for carrying like the quote-unquote healthy option. Okay, I have an uncle who has type 1 diabetes. He's had it pretty much his entire life. He can't do anything about it. There is like very little that can be done if you're type 1 diabetic. Type 2 diabetes can happen with age. It can happen because of different health issues. It can happen because of morbid obesity. Type 1 is just something you're born with. It's like luck of the draw, essentially, unfortunately, right? Now, here's the thing. If he goes into a store, 9 times out of 10, they don't have any options for him. But if he goes into a store and he sees that they're catering to, you know, diabetics, he might be more inclined to go get something. And the way that people attract people to eating diabetic options are like have fun, fun, bright colors on them, and saying things like, hey, you know, this is guilt-free. You can indulge. You can, you know, cheat. Those are the words that they use because diabetics are people. And my uncle, like most other people, also likes to have treats every once in a while. And having those sorts of things can appeal to him, and he can think, oh, cool, I'm still like getting a little bit of a treat, but I'm still staying within my prescribed, you know, diabetic restrictions. And it's really important that he do that, right? This is the other thing. Unlike people who are morbidly obese, who can do whatever the fuck they want, people who are diabetic, if they eat too much and their blood sugar spikes, they can have very, very negative adverse effects. I'm now using the darker brown color, and I'm just going through. If you guys can see, my eyebrows are very patchy, like right there. I have a lot of missing hairs. So I'm just going to go through and I'm going to fill in there. Because while in person it doesn't look that bad, on camera, because of the light, it can wash that out and it can make them look patchy, even though they're fully filled in. So I just mean to say that if I was just, you know, hanging out with people, I wouldn't necessarily fill it in, but for camera, sometimes I go through with the dark brown and I'll fill it in. Also depends on whether or not I've like screwed up in like doing them correctly, you know, because I pluck my own eyebrows. And I also like to use it right underneath, right here at the front part of my eyebrows, just to give it a little bit more definition where the hairs are extremely sparse. So having words like that can trick a person who is diabetic into thinking, oh, hey, I'm still getting a treat, so maybe I should, you know, only have this. Maybe I should only do this. And it prevents them from cheating on a diet and potentially causing severe negative side effects to themselves. And rather than understanding that there's a whole group of people out there, right? People who are diabetic, who are a much larger group, by the way, than people who suffer with like binge eating disorder, than people who suffer with like bulimia, than people who suffer with anorexia even, right? People who have diabetes are a significantly larger portion of that. And then also people who have celiacs, right? These are not conditions they can do anything about. There is not like therapy that they can go to have any of those issues addressed, right? For most of these people, there's no cure, especially if you're type 1 diabetic. There's no cure for either one of these conditions. It's just sort of like living through it, suffering through it. So the fact that she got so triggered and got so mad that they would want to cater to those people as well, honey, you've got another thing coming. Now, look, if you are suffering from an eating disorder, then I'm sorry, I can understand how that could trigger you, right? But your triggers are your responsibility. If something like this bothers you so much, if being confronted with the idea that there could be potentially diet culture food out there, then that might be a thing that you might want to take up with your therapist. Hiding away diabetic treats and hiding away celiac disease treats and hiding them away under different sort of packaging to make it easier on you is not the answer. The world doesn't cater to you. The world isn't designed to like basically try and encapsulate every person who's facing a psychiatric disorder. The world is there to try and exist and make money. And that's what this business is doing. This very small business, by the way, which Demi Lovato went on an absolute tirade against and bashed them essentially for trying to be as inclusive as possible. And what if they, because of the negative backlash that they received, they decide to stop carrying products for people who have, celiacs, for people who have diabetes? Will these people who are now diabetics, well, they have one less place that they can eat at. But more importantly, you're now depriving an entire subsection of population from a small business. This isn't a Pinkberry, right? They don't have chains all over the place that they're getting revenue from. You are hurting a small business here. And she didn't recognize that. And look, the thing is, sometimes when something happens and it upsets us, we don't necessarily recognize that, hey, this is a thing that I did. This was wrong. I know I was hurt, but I was still in the wrong here, right? If she had just taken the L, she just come on and said, look, guys, I was wrong. I shouldn't have said that. Obviously, I have my own personal demons that I'm dealing with, and I let them get the best of me. I wouldn't be here making this video because I'd be like, that's great. She's taking responsibility. She understands that she was hurt by this, but that pain that you feel is very internal to you, and that other people shouldn't be put in a position of not having choices because something might upset you, right? And I would have been so proud of her for saying that. I would have even said, maybe she has a point. Maybe we can try and see if the companies that are creating these products can like label it with stuff like diabetic in large letters, and maybe less have like some of those captions there saying guilt-free, you know what I mean? Even if it is helpful, maybe that could make it a little bit more friendly. Or if they do have words like that, maybe don't put it on like whatever the advertising or the sign for it is, right? Something like that. I would have even given her some kudos that maybe she has something of a point here, and let's see if we can come up with a happy medium ground. She didn't do that. She didn't take responsibility at any point. She, even in her like quote unquote apology, she still went on this woe is me, feel sympathy for me sort of tirade. She never once came out and said, my opinion was wrong. I was wrong for putting a small business on blast, even after they slid into her DMs to try and explain the situation. They didn't put her on blast like that. She put them on blast, She never ever took the L. She never ever made people she never ever tried to look at it from their point of view. And it's just so like privileged and so out of touch that it makes me want to dismiss everything that she has said, including some of the points that I think otherwise I would have been like, maybe this idea has some merits, I'm now using the e.l.f. Ultra Precise Brow Pencil. This is like in the dark brown color. For some reason, they don't put the names of their colors onto their pencils, which is very annoying. Wait, actually, it's on the lid. I'm an idiot. This isn't brunette. So I'm using this. It's a pretty good pencil. It's not my favorite. My favorite is the e.l.f. one, but the e.l.f. one is really expensive and I go through them in like a month. So I'm not willing to spend that much money every month. I'm going to now use this pencil and just create like some hair-like strokes right in the front of both of my brows. If you guys can see, it's very, very empty. It's a very stark line where my brow hairs end. And so I'm going to go through and I'm just going to fill that in a little bit and then I'm going to comb it out. It just makes me want to dismiss everything she has to say because she's so out of touch. Like, cool, yeah, you can choose to not go into this place, but by putting them on blast, you're depriving them of business that they might desperately need, especially in the middle of this panic cotta that we're all in, right? Like small businesses, especially places that have food, have been hit very, very hard. So the fact that she doesn't see how this makes her look like a villain is... it's just ridiculous to me. And the last part of it, this is the thing that I found the funniest, is that before this, she actually had a ton of goodwill from people. You know, her documentary about her public struggles with addiction had come out. She talked about, you know, the suffering that she'd gone through, and people were very, very much so in her court. And with just that one action, she managed to destroy almost all the goodwill that she had built up. I'm now just using the other side of that spoolie, and I'm just combing the actual hairs both up and out a little bit. It's both going to soften the pencils and the powders, and it's going to give it a little bit more of a feathered look, which is kind of what I like. I like to just go from the end, the most amount of pressure here, and as it goes towards the end, I just sort of lighten the pressure because I don't want to disturb too much of the color, but I do want to diffuse it where it could be the strongest, which generally tends to be right along in here to give it as much of a clean line as possible. Sorry, the AC turned down. It's hot in here. I've got like several lights. Anyway, I'm going to finish my look off now because I realized I'd forgotten to do that, and I like having a complete face of makeup. So I'm going to use a little bit of this Too Faced Chocolate Soleil bronzer, and I'm just going to put this underneath my jaw. Anyway, the last thing that I want to say about this is that these women who are in the public eye, these very, very vocal women, a lot of times who are, you know, like Demi Lovato, right? People who have had an eating disorder but are currently, you know, in recovery, women who are of means, they seem to be very misinformed about the amount of, I guess, choice that smaller businesses have, the amount of privilege that they themselves have. The grocery store business, the restaurant businesses, they have very, very thin margins. These people cannot exactly afford to turn down entire segments of the population, and you essentially put them in a no-win situation by doing what you did. And the fact that you're not willing to recognize the great power imbalance that exists there, that your behavior could have potentially put a small business out of business in the middle of a pandemic, and the fact that you're essentially complaining about other people having an option, makes you the like unadulteratedly you are the villain in this situation, right? Last but not least, I'm putting a little bit of black eyeliner on it, just like underneath my eyes. And that's kind of all I have to say about that situation. Let me know if you guys agree, because it's entirely possible that I'm misreading the situation and you guys have a different perspective. If you can leave me your comments down below, I always appreciate that because it helps inform my opinion as well, right? Like, I am very open to having my mind change on certain issues. Not everything. There's a few things that I'm very stubborn on and I don't want to hear it. But for most things, I'm very open to having people who are informed about the situation, who took something different away from it, tell me. And that includes, like, you know, anything I have to say about Chantal and Amber, right? Like, I'm not a closed book when it comes to that stuff. So please do let me know what your opinions are down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up. If you hate it, you can give me a thumbs down. Subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. Hit the notification bell down below and hit all if you want to know when I upload any videos right away. I've got all my social medias linked down below. I've got Instagram, where I've got food stuff, life stuff, a little bit of everything. I've got Twitter, where I'm a little toxic and a little petty, but overall, you know, I'm kind of entertaining there. And I've got Patreon. Think of Patreon as the tip jar for the internet. So if you like the job that I'm doing here and you would like me to continue, hey, consider tossing a few coins in my direction. You don't have to. It's not necessary. But it really does help me out. And, you know, it's really good for the channel. I'm really not joking when I say that the Patreon donations really do make a very big difference. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, I'm Jasmine, the sequel, and I am not relatable. Peace. Special thank you to my patrons: Acrophobe, Ariel M, Christina, Courtney EP, Wild Rose, Xanthal, Jam Beans, Jay Thomas, Lauren Chris, Michael B. Petty, Debbie Elliott, Julia Q, Kate O, and a special thank you to my $25 patron, D. Higgins.